All right. So, let me actually quickly go over. So, essentially if you look at estimating AR models, you have 4 different classes of methods. You have Euler-Walker's method, which you have talked about, and then you have least squares method, which is also known as a covariance method, and then you have what is known as modified covariance method. I will just briefly mention that, and then the Berg's estimator. Berg's estimator is very close to modified covariance method, but it has a nice flavor to it, which guarantees stability of AR models. None of these 3, in fact the least squares method or the modified covariance method do not guarantee stable AR models. On the other hand, Euler-Walker's method does give you stability, but it has another issue. Berg's method is among these 4 the best one in some sense. Of course, as I said, you can always set up a problem where Berg's method also does not perform so well. In a general sense, Berg's method is good. Then you have MLE also if you want, but typically we do not use MLE to estimate AR models, because they are linear, they give rise to linear predictors. I can happily live with linear least squares kind of estimators. You use MLE when you have an MA component and so on. Nevertheless, I will show you how you would set up the MLE for estimating an AR model, so that you get an idea of how the likelihood functions are set up for correlated processes. We have taken a very primitive example or elementary example earlier for setting up the likelihood function. These are your Euler-Walker equations and this is your solution, we know that. So, you set up as many equations as you have as a number of parameters, and you have used it quite a few times, and the estimate of theta is simply minus sigma p inverse, this small sigma p, and the estimate of sigma square e is obtained using this equation. And sigma p in general is invertible as long as the signal has some finite variance. So, this is a theoretical result, by the way. Remember, your Euler-Walker method is a method of moments. Here you have theoretical expressions for estimating the parameters, and we replace these theoretical sigmas by the respective estimates, that is all. You can show, so what kind of estimator do you use? A standard autocovariance to construct your big sigma. You can show that the Euler-Walker method is similar to the ordinary least squares estimator. How do you show that? Well, I am avoiding the proof, but it is not difficult to prove that. We have arrived at this solution by setting up the Euler-Walker equations. All I am saying is you could have arrived at the same solution by solving this kind of an optimization problem. This is a least squares optimization problem. However, look at the summation. The summation runs from k equals 0 to n plus p minus 1. P is the order of the AR model that you are estimating. If you were to set up the classical OLS problem, what would the summation run from? P plus 1 to n, or p to n minus 1, right. Whereas the Euler-Walker method is also solving a least squares problem, that epsilon is the same, your prediction errors, but the summation is different. So, it requires the knowledge of prediction errors from k equals 0 to k equals p or p minus 1, and k equals n minus 1 to n plus p minus 1. So, to the left and right of your OLS, it requires the prediction errors. All you have to do is compare the given objective function with what you would see in an OLS setting. Okay. So, this would be you say minimize theta, this would be the OLS formulation or the least squares formulation. So, compare with what you have on the screen in equation 4, and you see that the Euler-Walker's method is equivalent to an OLS, but with a slightly extended data. That is why the Euler-Walker's method is also called, many a times it is not clear, but when you look up the literature, there is this name called the Euler-Walker method is called, is frequently referred to as pre and post windowing of data. What is this pre and post windowing? There is nothing. All you are doing is, you, in order to generate your prediction errors from k equals 0 to p minus 1, and again k equals n to n plus p minus 1, you need data. In the least squares method, although we have n observations, this is the objective function. So, many a times you will see that the Euler-Walker's methods are presented as least squares with pre and post windowing. That pre and post windowing comes about of this fact here, that you are solving this kind of an optimization problem, where you pad zeros before and after on both ends of the series and then artificially generate your prediction errors. The idea is that I do not need to write different routines, I just need to have a least squares routine. If I want to implement Euler-Walker's method, I will pad zeros to the left and right of the data, so that I eventually solve this, that is all. That is the idea of establishing this equivalence between Euler-Walker's method and Euler's method. Anyway, so what is of interest to us is the asymptotic properties of this Euler-Walker estimator, and it says that asymptotically, you can show that asymptotically the Euler-Walker's estimates of AR models, we are only restricting ourselves to AR models, are Gaussian distributed, and you can see it is consistent, and this is a theoretical result. This sigma square E is a true sigma square E, this gamma is nothing but the sigma that you have seen earlier. In practice, what you do is you would replace sigma square E with its estimate, and you would replace the covariance matrix with its estimate computed from data. Since it is Gaussian distributed, approximately each parameter estimate also has a Gaussian distribution, only approximately, because the true result is a joint Gaussian distribution, remember that. From where you can construct the confidence regions, from where now you can come to the conclusion. Remember, how do you compute now? From this is the result from where you derive the significance band for PACF coefficients. What is the PACF coefficient at any lag? It is the last coefficient of the AR model of a certain order, of that same order. Suppose the true process is AR of order P naught, and you fit an AR model of order P greater than P naught, right. Then you can show that the coefficients in excess of the true order, that means your additional coefficients that you have included, they follow this kind of a Gaussian distribution. How do you come to this conclusion from this result? Remember, when you fit in excess, the corresponding true values are zeros. So, suppose the true process is AR1, I fit an AR2. What happens? The additional coefficient that I have D2, the true one is 0. So, you substitute 0 here approximately, that is you take for the single parameter, the true one would be 0, you would be left with root n theta for that. So, this distribution is for only those coefficients that are in excess, all right, this particular distribution that I have written here, because the true value is 0. So, what it says is, if the true parameters are 0 valued, the corresponding estimates have a Gaussian distribution with variance 1 over n and mean 0. So, for example, if the true process is white noise, that means any AR model that I fit, the true parameters are 0. You can use this now to construct the significance bands for the PACF, when particularly when the true process is white. When the true process is white, any AR model that you fit, the true parameters are 0 value. Okay? And what are these thetas going to be? They are going to be PACF coefficients at each. So, I fit AR1, I fit AR2. So, what this says is, if the true process is white, then there is no parameter at all, parameters are 0 valued. Any AR model that you fit, Vk is 0 times Vk minus 1 plus 0 times Vk minus 2 and so on, right, up to 0 times Vk minus P plus Ek. So, if I fit an AR1 model, this result says, this result here says that theta hat times root n of the first of the only parameter that I am estimating has a Gaussian distribution with mean 0 and variance 1. What is the true parameter corresponding to 0, right? So, now this theta 1 hat is nothing but the PACF at lag 1, regardless of the true process. We know PACF at any lag is the last coefficient of the AR model. Therefore, straight away I can say from this result that theta 1 hat, the variance of theta 1 hat is 1 over n and it has a Gaussian distribution. Now, when I go to AR2, since I am interested in the PACF, I will look at the second coefficient, the same story. So, every PACF coefficient for a white noise process, every PACF coefficient for a white noise process will have the same variance and will also have a Gaussian distribution. In other words, the PACF estimates have a Gaussian distribution for a white noise process. At all lags it has a Gaussian distribution. This would not be the case if the underlying process is AR1. If the underlying process is AR1, the PACF coefficients from lag 2 onwards will have this kind of a behavior. So, this is the basis for deriving the significance bands for PACF. To summarize, if you do not understand any of this, the PACF coefficients at any lag for a white noise process have a Gaussian distribution, coefficient meaning the estimates of those have a Gaussian distribution with variance 1 over n, which means the significance bands 95% significance bands would be plus or minus 1.96 by root n, same as ACF, interestingly. Okay. So, that is what I have given here. There is only one thing that I want to say about Euler-Walker's estimator before we move on to Berg's estimator, which is that when the true process is an integrating or a near integrating process, when the poles are close to unity, unfortunately the Euler-Walker estimates have large variability in them. And this is very well researched and documented in the literature. People have come up with reasons and so on. I do not want to go into the reasons, but one of the reasons that is commonly cited is that the autocovariance matrix that you are going to invert, that becomes poorly conditioned when the data is coming out of a process with poles near the unit circle. So, when you know that the poles are near the unit circle, that is when you know that there are near integrating effects, you should not try and use the Euler-Walker's method to estimate the AR model coefficients. You should, even you could, but the way error is going to be high compared to the other methods. On the other hand, because of the way the sigma is constructed, you can guarantee that the Euler-Walker's method will give you stable and so called minimum phase, that is the zeros will be inside the unit circle. So, that is something to keep in mind with Euler-Walker's method. Remember, this is all of this is only for AR models, it is not for MA models. We know for MA models Euler-Walker's method gives rise to nonlinear set of equations, and in fact it gives rise to even inefficient estimates. So, let us not get into that. This is just a hand calculation, you can go through the example. I am just giving you for some process for which I have generated 500 observations, I would like to fit an AR2 model. Suppose I am given the variances at lag 0, variance at lag 0 and ACF at lag 1 and 2, that is all I need to estimate the AR2 model. So, you can do your hand calculations with theta. Of course, you do not need them in the exam, but just because you would have R with you, you will be able to do it on the computer. But just in case you want to know manually how you would compute the estimates, these are the expressions. So, I am going to go past this example. The true coefficients that I used were minus 1.2 and 0.32. and estimates are given here minus 1.258 and 0.374, so not bad. Okay, so the least squares thing we have already discussed. The least squares method simply runs as I said, this should be uppercase P here, that is what it is doing. You can show that the least square, earlier we said Euler-Walker's method can be shown as least squares method. You can show that least squares method is also Euler-Walker's method, simply because we have done that before, right. We have said the least squares method is the same equivalent to method of moments. The only sorry so here is the equivalence. You can write the least squares method as minus sigma inverse times sigma, and the only difference is the use of sigma hat. How you construct your sigma hat in least squares is different, the way you construct is different from the way you construct your sigma hat in Euler-Walker's. In what is the sigma hat? It is nothing but your variance covariance matrix, your autocovariance matrix. This autocovariance matrix is constructed in Euler-Walker's method using one way and is constructed using least squares method in a different way. This perspective of viewing one method as equivalent to another method is extremely useful for two reasons. One, to understand why and how different one method is from the other method. Two, for computational reasons. I can have a unified algorithm and the user simply has to say, well, I want a least squares. So, you would, earlier I said you can have a single least squares algorithm and implement least squares, Euler-Walker's, everything, or you can have a simple Euler-Walker's method and implement Euler-Walker's, least squares, everything. The only difference is in the way you would construct this variance autocovariance matrix. So, it says here that unlike in the Euler-Walker's method, the autocovariance is estimated differently. Remember, in the Euler-Walker's method we used a different estimator of autocovariance. Here there is a slight difference, and that can make that can have a significant impact on the nature of the estimates. So, this is the autocovariance estimator that you would use. What is the autocovariance estimator we used in the Euler-Walker's method? If you recall, this is the method we said, this is the estimator that we use for autocovariance here, right. Whereas, in the least squares it is equivalent, although you are solving a least squares problem, it is equivalent to solving a Euler-Walker's method, but with this estimator of autocovariance. And you will once again get a symmetric sigma here, so there is no issue. And the Burke's method, so that is a least squares method, it more or less asymptotically has the same properties as a Euler-Walker's method. The Burke's method uses what is known as, the base of Burke's method is based on what is known as modified covariance method. By the way, the least squares method is also known as covariance method because of this equivalence. The Burke's method says I will solve a different objective function where I will not only look at the forward prediction errors, but also the backward prediction errors. What is backward prediction errors? If I give you a model, you should be able to forecast and backcast. How can you backcast? Because of stationarity. You say if Vk influences Vk minus 1 in a particular way, Vk minus 1 has the same correlation, although it does not have a time influence, but if I give you Vk minus 1, you should be able to if I give you Vk, you should be able to recover Vk minus 1. If I give you Vk minus 1, that's, and predicting Vk is forecasting. On the other hand, if I give you Vk and ask you to backcast Vk minus 1, you should be able to do it for a stationary process, because the correlation is the same in each direction. This modified covariance method says I will actually now, to improve the properties of least squares and Euler-Walker's methods, I will actually minimize the backward prediction errors also. And as a result, you get into this kind of, I am going to skip the math here. As a result, you can show again that this modified covariance method is also a Euler-Walker's kind of method, but with a different estimator of sigma. So, you see the method of moments has so many flavors to it. All it says is the fundamental relation between parameters and moments remains the same. It is your choice. If you change the estimate, if you choose to work with a different estimate, you will get a different parameter estimate. So, the method the modified covariance method, although it is solving this kind of an optimization problem, what it is essentially doing is it is using a Euler-Walker's method with a different estimator of sigmas, autocovariances, and that estimator is given here. Okay. All right. In fact, this should be V here, there is a mistake and I think there is 1 over n that is missing, I will correct that. So, now what Burke's method, I am going to skip past it, the Burke's estimator is a build up on the modified covariance method, guaranteeing two things. Unfortunately, the modified covariance method suffers from two drawbacks. One, it does not guarantee stable AR models, meaning it does not guarantee that you will get stationary AR models. Secondly, there is no recursive algorithm that you can use to estimate coefficients of AR models of higher order. Like you have in the PACF, essentially what is your PACF? Estimating an AR model, but there is a Durbin-Levinson's algorithm that recursively estimates this. Those are the true drawbacks with modified covariance method, and Burke addressed that in his PhD work in mid 70s. Although the title of his thesis reads differently slightly from what we discuss here, but essentially his contribution was largely the development of a new algorithm for the estimation of AR models that guarantees stability, stationary AR models, and at the same time guarantees a recursive algorithm. All he does, if you keep aside all the math and so on, all Burke does is two things. One, he rewrites the AR model in terms of the PACF coefficients. So, if you take an AR2 model, the model is minus D1, let us write here D21 Vk minus 1 minus D22 Vk minus 2 plus Ek. This is your AR2 model, general AR2 model, right. I have written D21 and D22 so that when you go to AR3 you would have D31, D32 and D33. What the key idea that Burke introduced is reparameterization. What we mean by reparameterization is, do not express your AR model in terms of Ds, just rewrite in terms of PACF coefficients. D22 is anyway the PACF at lag 2, that is not an issue, or minus D22. It is D21 that is not the PACF coefficient. But if you recall, in the DL algorithm, you can actually estimate D21 once you know D22. You remember when we wrote the write the expressions for the Durbin-Levinson's algorithm, how do you compute PACF at lag 2? First you compute PACF at lag 1. Okay, that is nothing but your autocorrelation at lag 1. Then you compute D22, which is PACF at lag 2. Once you compute PACF at lag 2, you can compute D21 as well, right, using D22 and D11. But what are D22 and D11? They are nothing but the PACF coefficients. So, this means you can rewrite this. This is anyway my phi at lag 2. This is PACF coefficients, no problem. This is plus phi 2 or whatever. If you say kappa is the symbol that sometimes is used in the literature, that is the PACF at lag 2. You can re-express this in terms of the PACF at lag 1 and PACF at lag 2, and you can carry on this. It turns out that with this reparameterization, so in his work, in his algorithm, he does not estimate Ds, he estimates PACFs directly. He writes everything in terms of PACF and forces, as a result, you are automatically building in a recursion. There is no, so in Burke's method, when suppose in your spec.AR, I said it uses a Burke's method. Suppose it is estimating an AR model of order 10, what it is actually doing is, it is estimating AR model of order 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 10 in a recursive manner. It is not straight away estimating an order 10, unlike what you do in Euler-Walkers or least squares and so on. It does it recursively. The advantage is you have a host of AR models that you have estimated, although it does not report that to you, but you can do that. In fact, AR.Berg will do that for you. The other modification which he did, which was only, so the two modifications, one is reparameterizing the AR model in terms of this PACF. These PACF coefficients are also called reflection coefficients, that is a different term that is used. He forced that at each stage of recursion, he guaranteed that the K or the kappa or the PACF at each P order is less than 1. In his algorithm, he solves the problem with this kind of a constraint. What does this constraint achieve? Stationarity. If you, I mean, it is not so obvious. For AR1 it is obvious. At higher P orders, it is not so obvious that guaranteeing this will get you less than 1. But remember, let us look at this scenario. I am estimating an AR3 model. What does Berg's method do? It first estimates an AR1 with the constraint that the PACF should be less than 1. Then it estimates AR2 with the additional constraint that PACF at lag 2 should be less than 1. Then it estimates AR3, which is the order that you asked for, with the additional constraint that PACF at lag 3 should be 1. So, it actually constrains that PACF at all lags should be less than 1, and thereby guaranteeing the stability of your AR model at any desired order. So, that is the beauty in Berg's method. It has certain disadvantages, but otherwise it guarantees stability, computational efficiency, and that is why Berg's method is used widely. But it is, you can show that essentially he is solving the same optimization problem, which is minimizing this sum of backward and forward prediction errors. So, that is the point here. Okay. So, you have backward and forward prediction error, that is the difference in with respect to least squares, but apart from that the key point is the parameterization. That is all. The rest of it is math. I am not going to go over that. I just wanted to explain the basic idea. So, I will skip the estimation procedure. I wanted to get the principle across. Unfortunately, analyzing the variance of the resulting estimates is not so easy as a result of the parameterization. It is quite complicated. So, the only thing that I wanted to talk about is the MLE. I am going to skip the Berg's method example. Let me close the discussion with estimating AR models using MLE. The ARMA model anyway, you will end up solving a nonlinear least squares or an MLE. How do you actually set up the MLE for an AR model? Yes.